Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari. Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari. Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Oh, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Kunja Bihari. Jayam Vishnupad Paramhamsa Parivrajacharya Stutarashata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Abhay Charanaravinda Bhakti Vedanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Shri Shri Gauranitai Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Giridhari Ki Jai, Lord Jagannath, Lord Baladev, Lady Subhadra Ki Jai, Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the divine lotus feet of Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Good morning, everyone. So we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 1, The Advent of Lord Krishna, Introduction. And today we are on text 17. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Krishna Swadamo Bhagate Dharma Gyanadibisaha Kalonasta Drishamesha Puranarko Dunodita. This Bhagavat Purana is as brilliant as the sun and has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by knowledge, religion, etc. Persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance in this age of Kali shall get light from this Purana. So, okay. Yeah, you do the word. Yes, yeah, from the transliteration. Thank you. Okay. Bhumi, Earth, Mother Earth. Oh yeah, just doing the Sanskrit. Okay. Dripta, Nripavyaja, Daitya, Anika. Not the word by word. Okay, sorry about that. Okay. Daitya Anika, Shatayuktai, Akranta, Buribarena, Brahmanam, Sharanam, Yayo, Bhumir dripta nripa vyaja Daityanika shatai yuktai Akranta buri bharena Brahmanam sharanam yayo Bhumir dripta nripa vyajam Daityanika shatayutai Akranta buri bharena Brahmanam sharanam yayo Bhumir dripta nripa vyajam Daityanika shatayutai Akranta buddhibharena Brahmanam sharanam yayo. Please chant. Bhumir dripta nripa vyaja Daityanika shatayutai Akranta buddhibharena Brahmanam sharanam yayo. Bhumir dripta vyasa Daityanika shatayutai Akranta buddhibharena Brahmanam sharanam yayo. Bhumir dripta nripa vyaja Daityanika shatayutai Akranta buddhibharena Brahmanam sharanam yayo. Bhumir dripta nripa vyaja Daityanika shatayutai Akranta buddhibharena Brahmanam sharanam yayo. Anyone else? Bhumir dripta nripa vyaja Daityanika shatayutai Akranta buddhibharena Brahmanam sharanam yayo. Anyone on the internet? Okay, so we will do the word meanings. Bhumi, Mother Earth. Dripta, puffed up. Nripa Vyaja, posing as kings, or the supreme power personified in the state. Daitya, of demons. Anika, of military phalanxes of soldiers. Shata ayutai, unlimited, by many hundreds of thousands. Akranta, being overburdened. Buribharena, by a burden of unnecessary fighting power. Brahmanam, unto Lord Brahma. Sharanam, to take shelter. Yayo, went. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Once, when Mother Earth was overburdened by hundreds of thousands of military phalanxes of various conceited demons dressed like kings, she approached Lord Brahma for relief. Please repeat. Once when Mother Yashoda, once when Mother Earth, 10th canto. Once when Mother Earth was overburdened by hundreds of thousands of military phalanxes, of various conceited demons dressed like kings, she approached Lord Brahma for relief. Purport. When the world is overburdened by unnecessary military arrangements, and when various demoniac kings are the executive heads of state, this burden causes the appearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As the Lord says in Bhagavad Gita, 4th chapter, 7th verse, we can all say it together. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyutanam dharmasya tadatmanam shrijamyaham. Whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice, O descendant of Bharata, and a predominant rise of irreligion, at that time I appear myself. End quote. When the residents of this earth become atheistic and godless, they descend to the status of animals like dogs and hogs, and thus their only business is to bark among themselves. This is dharmasya glani, deviation from the goal of life. Human life is meant for attaining the highest perfection of Krishna consciousness. But when people are godless, and the presidents or kings are unnecessarily puffed up with military power, their business is to fight and increase the military strength of their different states. Nowadays, therefore, it appears that every state is busy manufacturing atomic weapons to prepare for a third world war. Such preparations are certainly unnecessary. They reflect the false pride of the heads of state. The real business of a chief executive is to see to the happiness of the mass of people by training them in Krishna consciousness in different divisions of life. Chaturvarnya maya shrishtam guna karma vibhagasha. Bhagavad Gita, 4th chapter, 13th verse. A leader should train the people as brahmanas, kshatriyas, vaishyas, and shudras, and engage them in various occupational duties, thus helping them progress toward Krishna consciousness. Instead, however, rogues and thieves in the guise of protectors arrange for a voting system, and in the name of democracy, they come to power by hook or crook and exploit the citizens. Even long, long ago, asuras, persons devoid of God consciousness, became the heads of state. And now this is happening again. The various states of the world are preoccupied with arranging for military strength. Sometimes they spend 65% of the government's revenue for this purpose. But why should people's hard-earned money be spent in this way? Because of the present world situation, Krishna has descended in the form of the Krishna consciousness movement. This is quite natural, for without the Krishna consciousness movement, the world cannot be peaceful and happy. Om Jnana Timirandasya Janan Janan Shalakaya Chakshurun Militanyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Shvayam Rupa Kadamayam Didati Svapadantikam Jai Vanchakalpatarubhis Cha Kripa Sindhubheva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. When I was fairly new in the temple here, we had a nice older devotee named Mahashan Prabhu. And sometimes he would lead kirtan, and in the middle of the kirtan he would go into Hare Nama Eva Kevalo Kalo Anasteva Gatiranyata, with mridangas and kartals, and then back into the Hare Krishna mantras. So as Prabhupada is pointing out, the Lord is incarnated as the Hare Krishna movement, right? It's very, very beautiful, actually. So, let's see, too many glasses. So this is very, we are, again, kind of really getting into the prelude for the appearance of Lord Krishna. And so what we see happening here is that the situation has evolved where the world is full of conceited demons. How does Prabhupada explain it? Who are dressed as kings. So he's not even giving them the credit of being bona fide kings. They're actually conceited demons and rogues dressed like kings, right? And they were creating very difficult situation. So difficult that Mother Bhumi, right? How much weight can Mother Bhumi hold, right? She can hold a lot of weight, right? But she was feeling overburdened by these excessive phalanxes and phalanxes of military forces, of all these conceited demons, because I had a general idea, but I looked it up. This is a few of the meanings from our friends at the Cambridge Dictionary on conceited. Sorry, my visor, not so good. Excessively high opinion of oneself, exaggerated sense of self-importance, vanity or arrogance, right? So at that time, a lot of the leaders, they were infected with this very conceited consciousness like that. So would anyone like to share some of their favorite conceited demons who were masquerading as kings at the time of Lord Krishna's appearance? Don't be shy. Ramapati Prabhu? Kamsa was the number one. What a conceited demon, right? Right. He had a very exaggerated sense of self-importance, right? He actually wanted to become the top of the top, right? And he was actively working hard. He married into whose family? Another very conceited demon. He married two daughters of another great king. Jarasandha. So he was manipulating the situation so that he could gradually become the most powerful. And this is how you do it. You make alliances, right? In those days, because the royal families, the whole world was ruled by royal families, right? So a lot of times it was done by marriage. You would make an alliance with another powerful, conceited demon. So he married two daughters, I believe it was two, right? And of Jarasandha, right? He was maneuvering in so many ways, and he had a whole stable of powerful mystic yogis, right? Who were serving under him, doing his bidding, right? Throughout the early chapters of the Krishna book, we just see Kamsa's very powerful henchmen coming to Vrindavan, right? And why was he sending them, right? Because of the omen that you would be killed by the eighth son of your sister. So then he's thinking, he has to kill all the babies like that. He sent Putna around, so. And all of this is because they think that they are everything, right? They're these conceited demons. They don't think of anyone else's welfare except for their own. And they themselves see themselves as the most important, the most powerful, the most worthy, like that. Very, very exaggerated. Who are some other of these? King Vena, yes. He wasn't in Krishna's direct Leela, but boy, what a conceited demon, right? Absolutely. He really took the cake, right? And this also brings up, how samskara is very important, and how marriage is very important, right? He was in a very good line of kings coming from Dhruva Maharaj. But he happened to marry the daughter of death personified. It wasn't a real good match, And sometimes it's said that the son follows after the mother and the mother follows after the father, right? So you trace that back, So Venu was quite a character, although he was coming in a very good family. Yeah, very, very conceited. I mean, he basically thought himself to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Any other... Duryodhana and his brothers. Oh my God, you talk about conceited demons, right? Duryodhana and his brothers. He could not tolerate... What's that one story when... Who was it that sent him out? Was it Dronacharya? After so much training, and he had sent out Yudhisthira, the leader of the Pandava brothers, and Duryodhana, the leader of came to be known as the Kuru brothers, out, and they were, Duryodhana was supposed to find somebody more elevated than himself, right? Couldn't find him, right? And Yudhisthira had to find somebody inferior to himself and couldn't find him, you know what I mean? So these are their natures. You talk about conceited, right? Krishna himself, as a very last effort to save the world from the Kurukshetra war. I mean, it was building, right? All these kings were pouring into Hastinapur to support Duryodhana, right? So many phalanxes of soldiers, and all these other kings were pouring in. The Pandavas, were they in Draupadi's kingdom at that time, or the Matsya kingdom? Anyway, they were stationed somewhere else, and all these kings were joining them. So it's getting ready to happen. And as a last-ditch effort, Lord Krishna personally went as a messenger of Yudhisthira Maharaj to the court of the Kauravas to sue for peace, right? And he wasn't so hopeful. Like I think he confided to Satyaki and Uddhava that they're probably not going to agree, but at least we have to try, right? So Krishna came there just with a couple intimate associates, and he came in and he spoke very wonderfully. And of course, Duryodhana already had his plan, and his plan was that Krishna is coming, and if we can imprison Krishna, Krishna is the source of the Pandava strength, and if Krishna is out of the picture, Pandavas finished, game over, we won, right? So he had this plan that Lord Krishna was coming as a messenger. There was no question of doing anything like that. It's about as adharmic as you can possibly get, right? But he had this big plan, and it was all ready to go. All he had to do was say the word, right? There were soldiers waiting in the wings, So Krishna was speaking, and Duryodhana was getting very uncomfortable because he saw that Lord Krishna was convincing everyone of the validity of the Pandavas' cause, right? And yeah, Duryodhana was so demoniac that part of the presentation, Yudhisthira had said, tell them that we're Kshatriyas and our dharma is to protect the citizens. We have to do that on some scale. Doesn't matter that you've taken our entire empire, our entire kingdom. Just we're 5 brothers, give us 5 villages. Each one of us will rule over a village, protect the citizens, boss. And very reasonable presentation. I mean, more than, incredibly giving, right? At that time, Duryodhana and his brothers, with the help of their father, they had basically stolen the entire kingdom of the Pandavas, right? So, and they're just asking for 5 villages just so they can do their dharma. And Duryodhana famously said, not only will we not give 5 villages, we won't give enough land to stick the head of a pin into, right? So this is Duryodhana. You talk about obstinate, you talk about conceited. So anyway, at a certain point when Lord Krishna had, pretty much finished speaking and the deliberation would begin amongst the court of Dhritarashtra and his ministers, Duryodhana made the sign, and suddenly soldiers poured in from every door. I mean, this is a big assembly hall, big assembly hall. Thousands of people can be there. Suddenly soldiers are pouring in from everywhere to attempt to arrest Krishna, right? So Lord Krishna, Deva Jagatpate, he expands his universal form. And as this universal form is expanding, it just blows everybody back. I mean, this is explosive. This is like Krishna standing there, right? Appearing like a person. And all of a sudden, all the devas and planets and planetary systems and the demons and the yakshas, like everything is just expanding and just knocking people over. And Dhritarashtra is hearing about this and he's like, ah! And Krishna actually allowed him to see it. The one thing he saw in his life was Krishna's universal form. Actually, Krishna gave him vision at that moment. Krishna's so kind, right? But and so then the soldiers, Duryodhana, everybody was just blown out of their seats, blown to the floor, right? And then, Krishna sees what's going on, and he walks out, after that, Duryodhana, it was so conceited. He's reflecting on this whole situation. Krishna just revealed the universal form, right? He goes, well, you know, he's got some Shakti, but I have some Shakti too. I have some magic power. I have some potencies, right? So conceited. I mean, you know, could it be more obvious, right? The situation. So Duryodhana, right? Yeah, so this is these kind of personalities were around. There was that Pondraka, right? Sends Krishna a letter, you know, little, I guess they didn't have photos in those days, but maybe a little artist picture, you know, the great Pondraka. He had a couple of extra arms taped on, you know, and he was saying, you know, you are, you know, I command you, I am the real Vasudeva, and I command you to give up the symbols of Lord Vishnu, you know, and Krishna just had a good laugh, you know. He sent his messenger to Dwarka, and, you know, when the laughing stopped, you know, Krishna mentioned that, yes, yeah, I'll come to his city and I'll give up the, you know, the symbols of Vasudeva, including the chakra. So make sure you can catch it, you know. So yeah, so many conceited demons were there. We see that Jayadrath, right? Jayadrath, right? He's coming. He's stealing. The Pandavas were out, living in the forest on exile. Jayadrath comes and he tries to steal Draupadi, right? So conceited. She's the wife of the Pandavas, right? So full of conceited demons masquerading as kings. So this was the situation, you know, and Srila Prabhupada goes on to point out that when the leaders are in this consciousness, right, when they themselves are just conceited demons, then it brings the people that they're leading, the whole society descends into the status of hogs and dogs. The leaders, and because they're misleading the people, everyone just becomes concerned with, Prabhupada would say, pounds, shillings, and pence, right? Dollars and cents. Everything just becomes about material enjoyment, right? And there's nothing very unique about this, right? The dogs are also after nothing but material enjoyment. They just want some food, and they want some sex, right? The hogs, they're just after. So when you say, when we understand that civilization is being degraded to the level of hogs and dogs, very, very serious, right? This human life is very, very rare, very rarely attained. And it only has one purpose. And that purpose for which the human life was actually created by the Lord was so that people could become Krishna conscious. And this life is actually very short. It goes by very, very quickly. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada points out, well, actually just a quick one because we're on dogs. I was remembering that one nice story, you know, just it kind of gives a nice example of the doggish mentality of how we just want more and more and more. And we don't think about anything else. We just want gross pleasure, right? And in this way, we lose the goal of life. Srila Prabhupada told a story, and there was a dog, and he was, as dogs are doing, he was moving about, and he had some food in his mouth. And he came to a little reservoir of water there, and you know what happens when you look in a reservoir, like a mirror, right? Sometimes the water's like a mirror, you see your reflection. So the dog is wandering about. He has his prized food that he's going to eat when he gets back to his, you know, place. And then he sees another dog, and sometimes reflections, they even magnify bigger. And this other dog has even more food in his mouth, and he's thinking, let me get that food from that dog. So he opens his mouth to grab the other dog's food. And guess what happens? He loses his own food, right? So this is the doggish mentality, right? They're fighting and fighting, and actually they're only destroying themselves, right? Because they're wasting the valuable mission of human life. Like, and in this way, life goes by. So, you know, Srila Prabhupada points out that because they are in this doggish consciousness, they're spending all of their time just trying to build up very strong military power and armies and wanting to become the top, right? Every dog wants to become top dog, isn't it? Like when you have dogs in the wild, they form packs and there's a leader, and then dogs will fight amongst themselves sometimes to who will become the leader, isn't it? Many animals that are fierce animals that have packs, you also see this competition. Someone's the leader, some other dog comes and he's a little stronger, that dog's getting old, like that. So we see this going on, and this is what's going on when the leaders are not Krishna conscious. This is what's going on just before Lord Krishna appeared, and as Prabhupada very nicely points out, this is what's going on right now, culminating in everyone trying to get nuclear weapons, right? You know, just like right now, they advertise in the press that this country, Iran's trying to get nuclear weapons, so America's, you know, bombing all their facilities where they might produce nuclear weapons because we got them and we don't want you to have them. And of course, they're very dangerous weapons, and it'd be better if nobody had them, but they do, right? So in this way, they're just building up their nuclear arsenals more and more, and then, you know, they're trying to get their delivery systems, right? Now that sometimes you read about hypersonic missiles, which means missiles that can carry the nuclear bombs at speeds that are very, very hard to defend from. Faster than sound, right? Hypersonic, thank you. Yeah. So the idea now is lots of the big countries have these horrible weapons, and now the competition is to have faster systems of delivery so that I can blow you up before you can blow me up. You know, if I get enough of these nuclear weapons aimed at you, you know, we can knock out your capabilities and blah, blah, blah. But, you know, it's the same business, right? These are conceited demons, and for their own pride, they're just building up. And they're totally neglecting, they don't know themselves, they're totally neglecting guiding their citizens properly. And Srila Prabhupada points out the real duty of a leader is to train their systems according to Varnashram Dharma, to train their citizens that the Brahmins are trained as Brahmins, the Kshatriyas as Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas as Vaishyas, the Shudras as Shudras, the Brahmacharis, the Grihastas, the Vanaprasthas, and the Sannyasis. This is the system that Lord Krishna has given. Prabhupada says, not for exploitation by one class over another, but for smooth social intercourse and spiritual realization. This is the idea. You have a sane, peaceful society which is spiritually progressive, right? So Lord Krishna has given this system, and it's the duty of the leaders to actually make sure that the citizens are being trained in these roles. And when the population is trained in this way, then society can go very progressively forward towards life's ultimate goal, right? This is actually what is supposed to be happening. I wasn't able to be here physically yesterday, but we were driving to Orange County. We had class on the radio, and it was very interesting when Dharmaseta Prabhu pointed out that to be a pujari at the Radha Raman temple in Vrindavan, to be a cook, to be a pujari, you have 9 years of training. 9 years. You know, you're being trained for 9 years before you start cooking the offering on your own or going on the altar, doing the pujas, doing like that, right? We read about the Kshatriya training, when the Kauravas and the Pandavas were little boys, right? Who were they sent to? Dronacharya, right? Great teacher. And Brahmins are teachers. So because he's a Brahmin, Brahmins are teachers. So he was teaching the Kshatriya boys how to be Kshatriyas. And this went on for many, many years. They were trained very, very carefully for years and years and years, right? You know, this is very, very important. And you have like the Vaishyas, for instance, and very often in those societies, you'll be trained at home. Maybe your parents are Goshas, they're cowherds, they're taking care of the cows, or maybe they're engaged in business. I know Srila Prabhupada said some of the famous people with great business acumen in India, what is that group, Ramapati? Mararis. They're like fabulous business people, you know, and Prabhupada said they don't send their kids to college. They just train them at home in the business. You can hire 20 college graduates, but, you know, the Mararis train their sons at home because they're going to take over this business because they know how to make money, you know. Like a Vaishya, you know, like one indication of a Vaishya is like, if you see a Vaishya and he's just starting out in some small business, and whatever that business is, he's out there doing it, you know, he's opening a little store, or he's growing something, or he's taking care of a cow. You know, like they say in India that like if you're a Vaishya, if you're like a cowherd, if you want to get married, you have to get to the point where you have your own cow. You have a little land, you have a cow, then you're ready to get married, right? You have to have a way to take care of your family, right? So, you know, that training is there, you know, that training is there. When Lord Krishna was little boy and Balaram and all their friends, right? What was the first engagement they were giving? Herding the calves, right? They were herding the calves because they were little, the calves were little, right? Cowherd men are busy taking care of these. I went to New Vrindavan once, and an old friend, Chaitanya Bhagavat, he used to serve here. He had become a cowherd boy there, and I hadn't seen him in years, and we were talking, and he was telling me about cow herding, and he said, yeah, you know, there's nothing like a 1,500 cow coming and sitting next to you and, you know, snuggling up in your lap with her head, you know what I mean? He said, there's just nothing like it. And now actually that's becoming very popular. Various temples around America, farms, they have cow cuddling, right? Because it's actually true. Cows are such gentle animals. I mean, the right ones. Don't get the bulls, and don't get the ones that are a little naughty. In Michigan, where we are part of the year, they have a farm and they have cow cuddling, and they have a few cows, and only one of them they actually, Yashoda, she's very, very sweet, and they do the cow cuddling with her. They're listed they're very highly rated on the Airbnb experiences for that part of the country, and people come from all over to hang out with Yashoda and have snuggle with Yashoda and get milk treats from Yashoda's milk and prasadam, of course, like that. So and other temples are doing that now also, yeah. Yeah, so very, very nice, you know. So that training is there, and also Shudras, they're also trained in their occupation, you know, just like in the modern society you have this apprenticeship, right? So you'll be learning from somebody, often from your father, like that you'll be learning. So everyone is meant to be trained, right? Just like, and then we have brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, and sannyas. Here in San Diego, we have very strong, nice brahmachari ashram. We have so many nice brahmacharis, right? We have younger brahmacharis, we have older brahmacharis, senior brahmacharis, like that. And this is very, very, very important training, because the whole of these four spiritual orders, it all starts with the brahmachari training, right? If one is trained nicely as a brahmachari, one of the things they learn is celibacy. Another thing they learn is humility. Something else? Service attitude, discipline, exactly. Because we men, in these material bodies, we are endowed with the psychological Purusha Bhav, right? We have this little bit of a, you know, the man has to take some responsibility to deal with the outside world, to protect the wife, to protect the children. So there's a little bit, Krishna is the only Purusha, he's the only master. But to make all these things work in the material world, the men are endowed with a little bit of that. And that's necessary and it's important. But we need to be trained how to use that strength, how to use that energy, right? And it's not to be, you know, macho man, I'm the toughest guy on the block, but rather it is protection. It is to protect one's dependence, right? And the ultimate aspect of that protection, Lord Rishabhadev says, is to deliver one's dependence from the cycle of birth and death. And to do that, one has to be a devotee, right? Srila Prabhupada said, if the husband is a good devotee and the wife serves her husband, they both go back to Godhead, right? So this brahmachari ashram, it trains us to be servants of the Lord, right? It trains us how to utilize that masculine energy in a way which is very positive, to go out, to teach, to preach. And if one later enters into family life, to protect one's dependence, both physically, financially, and especially spiritually, right? So brahmachari ashram is very, very important, right? That is where we develop the qualities, and also by developing these habits, by developing an attachment to hearing and chanting about Krishna and serving Krishna and worshiping Krishna, right? By developing these habits, then the idea is that when one enters into the next stage of life, grihastha life, where one by necessity has to deal a bit more with the material energy to make ends meet, so to speak, right? But those habits that we develop in the brahmachari ashram, those will enable us to stay on course as we progress spiritually, as we progress through the grihastha ashram. And as we progress out of the grihastha ashram, those very same habits will enable us to again become more renounced in the vanaprastha ashram. That's the it's like the, what do they call that? The hidden ashram, because everybody joined the Hare Krishna movement and everybody became brahmacharis, brahmacharinis, and we started with sannyasis. That was needed, right? So, and then everybody started getting married, but like nobody was old enough to become a Vanapras. So, fortunately, Jayaveda Maharaj is writing the book now, so we're going to get some instruction. I mean, some instruction is there in the Bhagavatam, one wears tree bark and so many things goes to the forest, but that may not be so practical in this age. But the idea, again, is that taking this training that we're getting in devotional service and applying that in all of the different stations of our life, so then we come to older age. Prabhupada says, 50 is like the light turns yellow. Caution, slow down, danger ahead, and the red light is death, right? So Vanapras means that now I've completed these material responsibilities, the children are grown, everything is settled. Now let me dive back in deeper and deeper into my spiritual life and into my seva to the Lord and the devotees, like that, right? And then finally sannyas. So this is the real duty of the leaders, is to train the citizens in how to be human beings according to Lord Krishna's system of Varnashram Dharma, which is the stepping stone for Krishna consciousness, right? Varnashram Dharma, when you have a sane society which is all geared towards Krishna consciousness, then everyone can progress from where they're at. But there is a clear path forward for everyone. All of these orders, and especially the leaders, the kings, their duty is to protect the citizens, right? Kshatriya, Shut Trayate, to protect from hurt, right? And the greatest hurt is that one gets the human form of life and wastes it and falls back into the cycle of birth and death, right? That's the greatest hurt above all other hurts. So along with protecting us from criminals and from wild animals and from other dangers, the king's duty is to protect us from wasting this human form of life. So anyhow, as Prabhupada very strongly is pointing out, that's not happening. And the situation now has become just as dire as the situation when Lord Krishna appeared. And therefore, the Lord has now appeared as the Hare Krishna movement. And this was a very exciting statement. Sometimes Prabhupada, he says things that are very like, wow, And I was doing a little searching on that. And a lot of the places where Prabhupada speaks about that, he quotes this beautiful verse from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Kali Kalera Nama Rupe Krishna Avatar. Let me see if I can, got to go to the reading glasses on this one because I don't know the verse. Nama Haite Hai Sarva Jagat Nishtar. Very, very beautiful verse, and it explains that in this age of Kali, the holy name of the Lord is the incarnation of Lord Krishna. Simply by chanting the holy name, one associates with the Lord directly. Anyone who does this is certainly delivered. Right? So this verse is in the chapter where Krishnadas Kaviraj is describing Lord Chaitanya's pastimes somewhat in summary. This is towards the end of the Adi Lila. And after Lord Chaitanya went to Gaya and met his spiritual master and then began his mission of the Sankirtan movement, right? So he's describing that. And this verse comes right after that, Harinam, Harinam, Harinam eva kevalam, that there is no other way, no other way, no other way than the chanting the holy name, chanting the holy name, chanting of the holy names of the Lord in this age of Kali, right? So how important this is. So Srila Prabhupada, he brought Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement, right? It's, we understand Lord Chaitanya is the Yuga avatar. He appears to give us the process for spiritual perfection in this age, the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And he doesn't come alone. He comes with his associates, right? And Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhar, Srivas Adi Gora Bhakta Vrinda. Sometimes devotees chant, Gora Bhakta Vrinda, right? So the Lord appears with his associates of the Panchatattva and all the devotees headed by Srivas Thakur, right? So we're being given the chance to participate in this incarnation of the Lord in the form of this movement and the holy names. So what an opportunity, right? Srila Prabhupada, and I know it's getting late, so I'll end. Prabhupada often gave the example that when you take an iron rod and you put the iron rod into a blazing fire for a period of time, eventually the iron rod turns bright red, and it attains the quality of fire so much so that anything you touch it to will immediately blaze, right? So, or get burned, right? So in the same way, he explains that if we become fully engaged, sometimes Prabhupada uses this term %, like 100%, but very nice. If we become fully engaged, body, mind, words, thoughts, deeds, you name it, if we become fully engaged in this Krishna consciousness, then our own existence becomes completely spiritualized, even while we are living in this world, right? In this material world, in this material body. But when the body, the mind, the intelligence, the ego, the sense, when everything is being fully engaged constantly in devotional service, right? Then we take on spiritual quality like that. So in this way, we're enabled to participate in this wonderful movement, right? Srila Prabhupada, and I'll end with this, but he also gave a nice example that you can have a glass of milk, and I'm old, so I'm from the generation where milk was considered very healthy and very nourishing. And certainly in our Krishna consciousness movement, the fact that Krishna appeared to take care of Nanda Maharaj's 800,000 cows, we can make a case for it. So anyway, Prabhupada gave this nice example that if you have a cup of milk, which is so pure and so nourishing, right? And that will be very nourishing for anyone who, partakes of it, right? But if some dark ink or some poison is mixed, dropped into the milk, then it actually becomes contaminated, it becomes, poisoned, it becomes spoiled, like that. So Prabhupada said, so if you have a glass of milk, and not only is it full where something could enter into it, but it's overflowing. In other words, milk is constantly pouring into the cup of milk, so much so that the milk is flowing over the edges. Then even there's no room for any contaminant to enter into that glass of milk, and it remains pure. So similarly, if we're engaged in devotional service, and we're so engaged in devotional service that there's no bandwidth in our mind and consciousness for other things to come in, right? Then we're very much protected in devotional service. I think it's Shrudakirti tells a story that he was on a plane with Prabhupada, and Prabhupada glanced through one of the news magazines, I don't know, Time or Newsweek or one of those ones from that era. And after some time, he put it down and he said, devotees shouldn't read these because in these, they make the material world seem very real and important, like that, So, in other words, maybe we have to know something about the world, sure, but we are meant to be fully engaged in devotional service. And if we are fully engaged in devotional service, then our Krishna consciousness not only becomes manifest, but it also becomes protected and continues. Yeah. And that overflowing is also very good in the sense that when a devotee's cup is overflowing, very often other people get, affected by that, right? One devotee, Srila Prabhupada, was overflowing with love for Krishna, and he came out of India and he overflowed his love for Krishna to every country, every continent, and is continuing through his Bhaktivedanta purports to drown the world in love of Krishna. So we're so fortunate to be able to participate in this Hare Krishna movement. So I better end there for the time. No. Any corrections or comments, questions? Yes. What is your good name, Prabhu? Daniel, thank you. Welcome.
There's no name there. Hi.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I guess I just want to comment. I like how you spoke of the conceited demon kings, both during, at Lord Krishna's time and in the modern world. And I guess I just wonder, can even demons attain Krishna consciousness?
Wonderful question. Can even demons attain Krishna consciousness? Yes, and that is the purpose of the Krishna consciousness movement, is to make this available for everybody. Men, women, children, demons. Of course, giving it to demons is trickier. Sometimes it's described that one who is propagating Krishna consciousness, trying to share it and spread it widely, they share it very, very liberally with innocent people, right? But they're cautious. They actually avoid the demons, right? Because this is especially referring to speaking to them and really trying to get into a discussion, because they have an old saying, what is it? Give a fool enough rope and he'll hang himself, right? So sometimes we can't give such detailed, intimate information about Krishna because of their envious nature. They'll become offensive towards Lord Krishna, which will hurt their progress. However, Lord Chaitanya has brought these very, very powerful weapons, one of which is the holy name of the Lord that we've been discussing about, right? The chanting of Hare Krishna. And as this chanting of Hare Krishna is propagated, have you seen the devotees out and about, sometimes chanting in public?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like this started when Srila Prabhupada came to America. The devotees began to go out. It's called Harinam, which means holy name, Sankirtan, which means chanting the holy names together. So these parties started going out, right? And one time the devotees even asked Prabhupada, don't try this at home, but they asked Prabhupada, sometimes we're dancing down the street on Harinam and we see somebody, they're kind of like a demon and they cover their ears. What should we do? And Prabhupada said, one devotee pull one hand away and the other pull the other, and the third say, Hare Krishna. Of course, we don't always do this, but the principle is there that they're hearing Hare Krishna. And just by hearing the holy names, we have another weapon in our arsenal. It's called prasadam. Prasadam means the mercy of the Lord, and specifically in this context, it means food that's been offered to Lord Krishna. And by Lord Krishna's accepting his energy in the form of the food, it becomes blessed, so much so that anybody who partakes of it, their Krishna consciousness is awakened, right? And there's many stories where Prabhupada shared that, how by someone getting prasadam, their spiritual life has begun or it has become enhanced, right? So this is another very powerful weapon. And the cool thing about this one is it can be very insidious, right? You can just be like, at the, you're just looking for a good vegetarian meal, and you wind up at a Govinda's restaurant, and all of a sudden you're eating food offered to Krishna, or you might be out at the farmer's market and some, closet Krishna's out there with a whole bunch of baked goods, that are actually secretly offered to Lord Krishna, So, sometimes devotees have the experience, they may have somebody in their family who doesn't appreciate their involvement in Krishna consciousness, but who's really happy to get a box of Christmas cookies, and made by Kanai Balai, exactly. So after years and decades of getting Christmas cookies, from their devotee relatives, very often that'll change, right? So in so many ways, even people of a demoniac mentality, through exposure to Krishna consciousness, can gradually change. They're not our first priority, because we need to go where there is people that are receptive, right? Because that can happen very quickly. And the more people become Krishna conscious, then the easier it is gradually for the demons to be brought on board, right? But they're not so easy. And in some cases, they can be very, very obstinate, like some of the ones we're reading about in Krishna's Leela, right? So many of them came to fight with Krishna. Even Krishna's on the planet, but they came to fight with him, So yeah. Is that okay?
Thank you.
Thank
That's
you.
all.
Any Prabhu?
In that regard, some of you may not know, probably Daniel doesn't know, you probably heard of this guy called Donald Trump. So he was a big, as you know, he was a big developer, of architect and builder in New York, right? So in 1976, which was 10 years after Srila Prabhupada started the movement, there was the first Ratha Yatra. Have you ever, what a Ratha Yatra is? Okay, there's one coming up in California. I hope you can go in California, in LA, okay, in the beginning of August. Very nice. It's a procession with a cart where you take the deities, especially these Jagannath deities, out, and devotees. So this was right down Fifth Avenue. You know, Prabhupada started, he had no money, he had no followers 10 years earlier, but he had built it up, and he was coming for this first Rath Yatra. So we have to build these carts. They're really big, as tall as the ceiling or even bigger, you know, 3 of them. And where can you find land to do that? In Manhattan, you know. So they went to different places, and lo and behold, this guy Trump had bought the land that had been involved with a defunct subway system. So it had some land above it, and it was just suitable for doing that. And I guess they brought him some prasadam or something, but he agreed to let them use that land for free to build these carts. And they did, and it was a great success. The Prabhupada came and everything. And from that activity, you know, he got the punya in order to become president. I'm just you know, saying that this was, of all the things he's done, this is shines out as something helping the devotees, and so it's going to fructify. And when we see, you know, Trump with the bead bag, you know, and the tilak, we know that the world will change. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Dhruva Prabhu. Yeah, and in the Vaishnava scriptures, which are, many of them are histories, there's actually a lot of examples of demons, you know, people exhibiting very demoniac qualities, actually by encountering great devotees of Krishna, actually changing completely and becoming devotees, even in the same life. Yeah, so it happens. Anything else? Govardhan Prabhu.
Thank you, Vaikuntha Prabhu.
Govardhan Prabhu regularly goes out and gives Krishna consciousness to so many people, the gentlemen and the ruffians.
I just wanted to confirm, when Srila Prabhupada was reading that newspaper and he closed it and he told the devotees, don't read this because it makes the material world look real and important.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, and your spiritual master is where I've heard that story most often. Yeah, he's shared that, and it's a very valuable understanding, you know, because not that we are totally aloof from the world, we have to know what's going on, but it should just be the minimum, you know. It's easy, especially nowadays with the 24-hour news cycles everywhere. It's pretty easy to get sucked in social media. And, you know, you have to really resist the urge to dive into mundane subject matter and use that saved time to really dive into Krishna consciousness. Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, these wonderful books Srila Prabhupada's given us. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Glories to Srila Prabhupada.